Here begins the process of flower pollination. These particular flowers are lilies. As you come in close, the different parts of the lily will become clear. Here you can see the stamen, which are the male gamete, or sex cells, of the lily. The anthers and filament are what make up the stamen. The pollen is found on the anthers. The female gamete is called the carpel. The carpel comprises the stigma, style, ovary and ovule. This bee is attracted to the lily because of its brightly colored petals and sweet nectar. The bee is inside the flower trying to get to the nectar. The anthers are positioned inside the flower so the bee has to brush past on its way to the nectar. This means the pollen will transfer onto the bee ready to be transported to another flower. The pollen is attached to the bee and, yes, now the bee is going to leave the lily. Let's follow, shall we? The bee has found itself another lily. We're interested in what's going to happen to the pollen that came with it. See how the stigma is in the bee's way? The pollen transfers from the bee onto the stigma. The stigma is sticky so the pollen sticks to it easily. Let's see what happens next. But we might need to go in a bit closer. Once the pollen is transferred onto the stigma, the pollen tube starts to develop. This small tube grows up the style to the stigma and down into the ovary where it stops once it reaches the ovule. The pollen tube acts as a passage, down which the pollen's nucleus travels to reach the ovary. The pollen nucleus is then able to travel down the pollen tube to fertilize with the ovule nucleus. The male pollen nucleus fuses with the female ovule nucleus to form a genetically complete fertilized ovule. Once formed, the fertilized ovule goes through a process in which it transforms into a seed. When the fertilized ovule first starts to develop, it is known as a zygote. When it develops further, it is an embryo. When fully formed, it is a seed. During this process, the carpel develops into a seed pod or fruit. In the case of a lily, a seed pod develops from the carpel that holds and protects the seeds. In the case of other flowers, this can also be a fruit. The petals also usually fall away, leaving just the seed pod. The process is complete. 2 lily flowers have reproduced and created seeds. These seeds will go on to become flowers of their own.